Hey, this is Luke with Salt Strong, and just wanted to thank you for taking us up on the 11 for 1 offer. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna make sure that you maximize your results using these excellent lures. When rigged and used properly, these are the ultimate lures. You can literally go any body of water and catch redfish, sea trout, snook, flounder, obviously a variety of other species too, but we're gonna focus on those 4, but they have to be rigged properly. If they're not rigged properly, it's the opposite. They can actually be really bad, just like any soft plastic. And so rigging is by far the #1 thing to talk about. So before we even talk about the color selection, when to use which color, we're not even gonna bother with that in this first lesson. This first lesson is all about the most important thing, which is rigging and depth control. Depth control is the most important thing. No matter how good you rig it, you can have the perfect color, the best retrieve possible, the perfect rigging, but if you're not on the bottom and those fish are, it's wintertime, those fish are lethargic and they're sitting on the bottom, they're not gonna chase down a lure, you're not gonna catch anything, right? And so if you actually rig it properly and get the right weight, you get that lure down their face, even if it's not the perfect color for the conditions, or if it's not rigged absolutely right, it's at least right down there in their face and they have a shot at getting it. So rigging is crucial, depth control is crucial, and so we're gonna go through the rigging options that you need to factor in. Ideally, you have one of each of these, and we're gonna go through the pros and cons and the situations when you use one rig versus the other. So here are the rigging. The great thing about these lures, whether it's paddle tails or the split tails, right? The paddle tails versus the jerk shads, they all can be rigged on these same things. So for whatever lure package you have, this same setup of jigs and weighted hooks will apply. The columns are for a reason. This column is all about weedless. If you're fishing tight to structure, if I want to go up here and skip under these mangroves or bounce off those rocks over here, I'm gonna use this column right here, where I can get up there right in the mess, bump up against rocks, go over oysters. That's this column. The pro is that they're weedless. The con is that the hookup ratio isn't quite as good as this column, which is the open hook, so the open point hook. So when you rig these up, this hook point is gonna be out, it's gonna be exposed. And so obviously you're gonna snag onto structure that you bounce over more frequently, but your hookup ratio is gonna be better. So if we're not fishing near structure, this is an obvious choice, right? You wanna use the exposed hook. A lot of our favorite species, redfish, sea trout, snook, flounder, they like to hide near structure. And so what I find myself using more than anything else are this weedless column. And so each of these is for depth, right? So #1, do you need to be weedless or not weedless? And so just factor that in. If you need to be weedless, you automatically know, okay, I need to have a weighted hook or a jig that has a weed guard, or a new style, a Texas eye, which is basically a worm hook that's mounted to a jig head. And if you don't, you're right, if you're not fishing tight to structure, fishing like open grass or even trolling, and you're away from a lot of the structure, then these jig heads are the best bet, because as you said before, just the hookup ratio is better and they're easier to rig. All right, so once you decide which column you need, now it's about the depth that you're fishing. Again, crucial. This is the thing that's overlooked more often than anything else, is somebody will just go with one hook, right? This light weighted hook, and now they'll try to fish 4 feet of water. That's not gonna work, right? With this hook, that lure, right, whether it's a split tail or a paddle tail, is not gonna get 4 feet deep for most retrieves. It's gonna be higher up in the water column. It's excellent for the shallows. It's not very good at all for the deeper water. And so that's why you need to have a little bit of everything. So for the shallow water, right, if I was gonna go skip up into these mangroves, if I wanted to just go and kind of buzz over these rocks that we have over here, I would be going with this weighted hook, regardless if I want a split tail or a paddle tail. And so we'll talk about the differences on those here pretty soon. So this weighted hook, this is the 1/16 ounce weight. This is excellent for the shallows. I say up to around 2 feet of water. This is excellent. And then when you get deeper, right, if you need to have a little bit more weight, we can go up to the 1/8 ounce weight, right? And this weight is a little bit further down, so the lure has a slower sink rate. So the 1/8 ounce weight, this will now get to about 2.5, 3 feet of water. And then we need to go deeper, say 4 feet or more. That's when we need to go to an actual jig head with a weed guard, right? Because this weight, even with the same weight, the fact that it's weight forward, this is gonna dive down much faster, right? So just always make sure to factor that in. And again, the new style, which is this Texas eye, same thing, right? This weight is forward, so it's gonna dive down faster than the weighted hook. So you can just kind of judge your weights accordingly. And what I'll do is I'll put a cheat sheet down below that you can link to that gives the proper weights to use for every one of these lures, too, just so you don't have to sit here and try to memorize and take notes. It's all written down for you. And And I just want to go over the core concept. And the same thing is true for these jig heads, right? In this case, we don't have to be weedless, so there's not going to be a lot of structure on the bottom. This is when they're bouncing off of mud or bouncing off of sand, that you want that weight forward and you want that hook exposed. And now that, like, this is what I would use for, say, 2-3 feet of water, and then I'll go up to this is the 3/16, and then the 1/4 ounce, right? And this 1/4 ounce can actually get pretty deep. You just have to slow down the retrieve. I like to fish docks up to like 5-6 feet of water. And if you're going to be fishing a lot of deeper docks, then you can switch over to other jig heads. Like this is one caught from Mission Fishing, and they make it much bigger. And then you can get the 3/8 ounce, the 1/2 ounce, and even larger depending on the depth that you're covering. Again, make sure to match the depth properly. That is the number one mistake I see people make, and it's very easily avoidable. All you have to do is just get a couple jig heads. They're not very expensive, and you'll be ready for action. All right, so now for the actual application of the rig, and I'll show you, and I'll show some with the jerk shads and some with the paddle tails, because they're all the same, right? And so here's my favorite shallow water setup. So when I'm fishing grass flats, I love this Alabama Leprechaun. This is a split tail jerk shad, and I love it rigged on this light weighted hook. This is my ultimate for sight fishing, whether it's redfish, snook, trout up in the shallows, or triple tail off on the near shore buoys. This is amazing. And again, needs to be rigged properly. So as for the weighted hooks, when you're selecting a weighted hook, highly recommend the type that has this little pin. It's called a centering pin. Owner has a patent on it, so these are going to be Owner hooks. And we've teamed up with Owner. We're coming out with our own that has a little bit wider gap, so the hookup ratio is a little bit better with this one that we have. It's coming out soon. It's called Haas hooks. We'll put a link down below once they're ready. But what you really want is that centering pin, because that significantly helps in rigging these lures. And so how it works, right, is so we want to first start with the centering pin and get it right on the actual top center of the lure, right? And then you just poke it right in. So that basically forms the line of the twist, of this little spring once you twist it in. So now, once this first little coil is touching the bait, I'll get over on your side so you can see, once this first coil is touching, then we just push in and twist at the same time, right? And that'll dig that coil into the lure, and then you just twist it right up. And there you are. So super simple, it's easy to do, and most importantly, this thing holds very well. This thing is not coming off, right? I can put a lot of pressure on this thing, and these coils hold tight. It doesn't damage the lure, so you can take it on, take it off, no problem at all. So now we've done step one, we have this spring in. Now we have to take this hook through the lure, but super important is that we do it at the right spot. So we want to make sure that once it's rigged properly, this lure has no kinks, it is perfectly straight. If we go down too far, right, if I put the hook down too far, now we're going to have this big kink out there, and that is not going to be good. This is the ultimate strike killer, is when you have this big curve in your lure. That lure is going to helicopter in the water, and that does not look natural. No fish is going to eat that. That's the best way possible to not catch any fish when you're out there using some great lures. So what I like to do is I like to just kind of eyeball it and put my finger, or kind of rest it right on the side of the lure, and then put up my finger right where the lure would naturally go out. And then I just go through the middle and go down through the bottom, and then make sure that it's centered, right? And so the final test, once it's done, is just to look at it, right? Just hold it, look at it, make sure there's no kinks, there's no turns. And if it's like this, where there's no turns at all and it's right down the middle, this is gonna have very good action of the water. This is one of the ultimate lures for inshore saltwater fishing, because it's weedless. It mimics a scared shrimp as you do the twitch pause retrieve. It looks like both a scared shrimp coming out of the grass as well as an injured bait fish fluttering around. So no matter what they're keyed in on, this is gonna catch fish. This is my ultimate lure when I was doing tournaments. This is pretty much what I caught all my tournament fish with, is a 5-inch split tail jerkbait rigged on a weighted hook like this is really hard to beat. And also, if you're fishing really tight to structure, one little rigging trick is to make it ultimate weedless, is to dig that point into the plastic like that. Now I can go skip under these mangroves as far as I possibly can without worrying about getting snagged. I can take it over oysters, I can take it over rocks. Again, and then once that strike comes, right, fish hits it, hook point pops out, and now you get the hook up. Excellent, excellent setup. And as you said before, as you saw, it's really not that hard to do. You just have to make sure that it's rigged properly. If there was a kink, if I was off just a little bit, re-rig it, pull it out, redo it, and just make sure that the final result looks like this once you're done. And we'll go over the same premise with the paddle tail, because again, this is the ultimate for shallows too. If you're covering a lot of ground, this is the Slam Shady 2.0, and this is rigged on the Haas hook. This is a 3/0 Haas hook. Again, it has the same centering pin, and this is an extremely good search bait. It works all seasons in the same premise, right? We start with the pin, go right through the center head of the lure, get that pin in the right direction, and then just push down and start twisting. Push down, start twisting. There we are, and now it's started, and now we can kind of take the pressure off and really just twist it. It goes down by itself. I like to go till the lure basically touches the hook, or is at least really close to it. We get the cavity, the belly cavity pointed towards the side of where the hook is. It does work the other way, but this is the ideal way to do it. Again, same thing before, right? Put the hook down, rest it like it naturally would come out. Go down right through the middle, push it through right where the finger's pointing, and there we are. So that is a properly rigged Slam Shady 2.0 paddle tail on the weighted hook. Same premise, right? If I want to get super weedless, I just push it up a little bit and dig that hook point in, and now this is a super weedless setup that can just absolutely terrorize the fish up in the shallows. You can get right in their face without getting snagged, and then once that strike comes, that hook point will come out, and now you have your hook up. And so again, the reason why I like this hook a little bit better than the owner one is it just has a wider gap, and it helps just increase the hookup ratio. You have more gap down here for the soft plastic to get the hook set. So excellent setup. So now for jig heads, and we're gonna start with a split tail, a jerk shad, and we'll go to the paddle tail, but the same premise holds true. And so it's all about just making this thing look as natural as possible. So what we wanna do is we just kind of wanna lay it down to where the lure gets all the way up to the jig head, and then where does that hook naturally come out? And just kind of mark it. I like to mark it with my thumb. And then first step is to just go straight down the center of the bait, right, with the hook point. And make sure that this cavity is down towards the bottom. It's going away from the jig head, right? The cavity is pointing that way, and the jig head is actually on this side. So go right down the middle, and I like to just kind of shimmy it. Just kind of go nice and slow. There's no need to rush it. Just kind of shimmy it down, and just as you're going down, just make sure that this hook point is going down the center line, going down straight on the side axis, as well as going down the middle on this vertical axis. And we'll be able to see at the end how well I did. And again, if it's not right, go ahead and redo it. So I've gone down, and it's usually to right about there on the curve of the hook. That's where the hook point should come out. And again, that'll come out right at the spot that I kind of marked with my finger. And what you want to see is about this much curve before you take it up over the spikes. If it's perfectly straight now, when you go over the spikes, when you go up that extra ½ inch, it's now going to be too far, right? And so let's go ahead and just pop it up over the spikes. You want to do that relatively fast because that does rip the material. And there we are. So we pulled it up there over the spikes. It is now properly set up where there's not a kink. It's not bending down. It's not bending up. This is nice, perfectly straight on the side axis. And then when we look at it on the vertical axis, same thing, right? It's right down the middle. If this was curved, if this had a little U shape, that's not good, right? And go ahead and redo it. But when it is rigged properly, this is gonna have really nice darting motion in the water. This is an excellent setup for when fishing the deeper flats, or like fishing docks, where you can now get some really good action down there in the bottom. This is gonna sink fast because the weight's up there forward, and have really good, just all sorts of crazy motion down there in the water that's gonna generate strikes. So excellent setup. And again, just space or choose the jig head size based on the depth that you need. And that chart that's linked down below will show you that. And so we'll go through the same thing with the paddle tail. In this case, we'll use the Gold Digger. And so same setup, right? You want to just have this lure where it naturally comes out. It comes out the natural point. So kind of just eyeball mark it, and then go through the center of the lure and go down, and then pop it out, right? Make sure it's centered, pop it out at the natural point, and make sure it's going out the middle. You want to see about that much curvature on the hook before you go over the spikes. Remember that. That's a very helpful key for making sure that it's right, because once you go over the spikes and you pull it up and down a few times, it's gonna decrease the longevity of the plastic. So now at this point, I like to squeeze the sides, and that'll again help the longevity. Squeeze the sides, push it up, and then let it rest. And what you'll see here now is a really nice looking setup where, again, it's nice and straight. The hook did not distort the shape of the lure, straight on the side. It looks straight vertically, and this is gonna catch a ton of fish if we wanna bounce off the bottom. And this is a quarter ounce jig head, so this can cover like the 3 to 5 foot depth range just incredibly well, and it can catch all sorts of fish. All right, so one extra thing, if you do want to use a weedless setup, these are excellent for fishing docks. And so same premise as before with the jig head, except you just have to deal with this little barb here. So go down the middle, right? You kind of have to just push that barb out of the way and go down the center, nice and slow, no need to rush it. I felt like I was going off, so I just pushed it back up. I want to make sure that I'm going straight down the center, pop it out. This is a little bit longer hook, so we had to go down a little bit further, but again, you want to have just a little bit of a kink there. And now push it up over the barb, nice and straight on the side, nice and straight vertically. Now we just trigger the weedless barb there, and good to go. Again, excellent lure for skipping up under docks, for fishing around jetties, where you can get down there dirty, right in the structure without getting snagged. And then the last but not least, we'll go with the Texas Eye. And again, this is the same setup where you can be weedless. This is unique. And so in this one, we actually start on the bottom, right, where this little cavity is towards the jig head in this case. So start there, go down the middle, and just go down about 1/4 inch, right, and pop it out, right? So very unique one here. And so this is where we have to be a little bit careful. We'd have to get over this little ridge without doing too much damage to this all plastic. So I'll just do it over with this hand. So you need to do it relatively fast and get a good grip on it. So go up over the barb. Let's not damage the saw plastic too much. There we are. And so now we have it over that barb, right? Saw plastic still intact. And now the hook will just naturally come on the side. And all we have to do is just take the hook through the middle, and we're good to go. Go through the middle right at that natural point. So right down there through the middle. There we are. Now this lure again, same thing, where you can bounce it around rocks. The fact that this hook is just laid up right there on the top of it, this is gonna be very weedless. And if you want to get even more weedless, right, same as before, just bury that hook point, and now you can get in the really hard structure without getting snagged. Then once that strike happens, it'll expose that hook and you can catch that fish. All right, so that's it. Just really wanted to cover the rigging and depth control. It is just so important, and so just always keep that in mind. Okay, number one, do I need to be weedless or not? And that's where you go with the weighted hooks versus the jig heads. And then it's all about depth control, on selecting the right weight for whichever lure you're using. And again, for help for that, we have the cheat sheet. You can print that out, you can have it ready, and it'll basically go for every one of these lure types, and the depth that you're using, whether you're weedless or not weedless, exactly which rigging you need that'll best fit it. So any questions at all, leave a comment down below. Otherwise, we'll see you on the next lesson.